All right, got the truck moved to the other side of the garage so that side could be open up. Got the first gen in the shed. So Zach was over the other day and we were talking and going over this kit. So this is the intercooler. It came with the kit, all the piping. Most of the piping was going to have to change regardless because this is meant for a factory turbo and it was all kind of weird. And we were talking and we're like, well, bigger is better. And this thing is going to need all the cooling that it can possibly get because there's a lot of fuel going through there and intake air temps are key to horsepower. So we kind of agreed to go with the second gen intercooler. So with that being said, this kit probably isn't going to be getting used. I'm going to try not to take anything out of it so that way it's still a good usable kit that he can sell. So with that being said, we're going to start getting the front of the engine, or sorry, the front of the truck torn apart to see what we have to do to get this second gen intercooler to fit and see how much I have to cut off of this and cut out of the truck. Ideally, it would be minimal modifications to this, and that way down the road, if something happens, we can either A, replace it with another stock second gen intercooler, or he can upgrade to like a Mishimoto or something like that for some more extra cooling. So as far as what we got going on up here, haven't touched any of the front of the truck yet. Tape measure is laid out to roughly where the center of those outlets are. So that lines up pretty decent over here. This is centered in the truck to put it right underneath this overflow bottle. We're gonna get rid of the overflow bottle, do something else, and that'll be a nice angle to jump over and connect to the turbo. Over here, it'll be able to go right underneath the battery tray, go up and over into the intake horn. Undecided on what we're gonna do for an intake horn. If we're gonna use like a 12 valve one of a second gen or a third gen, or just make one. I may end up making one because I think that these non-intercooled plates are a little bit different and the intake sits a little bit further back than normal, so it's going to get in the way of the master cylinder. But we're just going to get the front of this torn apart and we'll go over a couple more things once you get the grill off and other stuff. All right, so as you saw there, we got the grill off, the lower valence off, his makeshift turn signals, which we're gonna fix. We have the Trinity cooler out of the way. We're gonna do probably an aftermarket, like in bed with a fan type Trinity cooler. There's just not enough room up front in here, and honestly, that cooler is gonna be too small for the horsepower for this truck to keep the Trinity cool anyway, so it's gonna work out better. And there's no way to have the Trinity cooler be there and have enough room. We're also going to keep the AC in this truck, which doesn't currently work, but it has everything to work. So he wants to keep the AC system intact, so we're going to work with that. So that being said, it does push everything out an extra like 1.5 inches, 2 inches or so. I cut out the brace here for the hood latch, just because that's something that has to go right away no matter what we do. I remember cutting that out of my truck back in the day when I did a 7.3 intercooler swap in my truck. So I got that cut out of the way. That's that piece there. I kind of started looking everything over and came up with 3 options. So we are going to go with the second gen intercooler. Like I said, we're not going to go with that kit. That kit, there's no way that that kit would work with AC to begin with, just because it is, I think it's a 1/2 inch thicker than that. So that's 2 inches. So that other one must have a 2.5 inch core. So the 3 options that I came up with was, one is going to be to relocate the safety latch for the hood to probably over on that side, and that'll allow the intercooler to come up much further and not get in the way of the safety latch. With that being said, there would be probably minimal amount that we have to cut out of the lower valence to get the fit after that. Option 2 would be to leave the safety latch in place, cut out the majority of the lower valence, and only have the 2 edges left behind. And option 3 would be kind of a combination of all of them, but cut probably 2 inches out of the top of that intercooler. So we don't want to go with option 3 because we do want to leave open the option of doing something aftermarket in the future. I did cut off, I think I kicked them on the truck. There was just 2 angle brackets on top of the intercooler. I cut those off to get those out of the way, but the less major work that we have to do to that, the better it is in the future. So I think we're going to go more or less with option one, which is going to be moving the safety latch over to one side, get the intercooler up as far as we can, and then just cut a little bit, just enough to clearance in that balance. All right, so you get caught up. I took the bumper off, got that out of the way just to make everything work. The bumper is going to sit lower than the intercooler, so I know it's not going to interfere with that, but it helps slide everything in and out straight. I cut out the pocket for the hood latch. From that, that's going to get relocated to one side or the other. We'll see which one has more room. That's just going to allow this intercooler to come up as far as it can. Right now, it's just, I got some old flooring from my house that I'm using as a spacer. A little bit thick on top. I may try to see if I can find something thinner to use as a spacer there, but just want to make sure I got clearance around everything so I don't have anything to worry about with it chafing, rubbing sheet metal, vibrating, making noises. So it's spaced on top. It's spaced in between the intercooler and the AC condenser as well. And then I got paint marker lines. I just traced out those outlet sections so that way I can kind of see where this is going to end up. And it's going to just get into this piece of the radiator support, which is not part of the radiator at all, which is good. So the next step is going to be flip this around, double check everything, and start making templates for these the inlets and outlets, and then popping holes in the radiator support and get that thing sitting in there nice. All right, so it's a few days later. I left off marking that, and I started working on a template. And I started with a cardboard template, just kind of make a proof of concept. And then I ended up taking that and putting it into a CAD file that I'm ultimately going to be able to cut out and then use these centers with a hole saw to get the majority of the shape put in place first, and then just connect the dots. If this works out, I'll make this available to anybody who is looking for it. If you're looking to try to get a hole in something for a second gen intercooler, this will help you. The factory mounts and stuff also came in. One of those things that, one, I really needed the rubber pieces, and I just happened to find them available. They were on eBay. If I couldn't find them and they weren't available, I would have came up with something different, but seeing how they were there, might as well use them. So I'm going to cut this out first and make sure this fits over here how I like it. It is pretty close fitting, so there's not going to be much room for error once I get it up in place and the holes cut. But the plan is to be able to cut the holes. I'll pull the battery tray out, get that out of the way. A couple other things I got to finalize up. Most of the stuff is ordered. I got a bunch of miscellaneous hardware and stuff in. I still have to order all the piping. Going back and forth on if I wanted to run a 3-inch pipe or 3.5, because it's 2.5 coming out of the turbo. A 3-inch pipe is what fits in the intake flange, but this is 3 3/4 coming out. So I think we're going to go with the 3.5-inch, because one, that's more pipe to dissipate heat to lower your intake temps, which is what's going to be huge for this thing, is getting the intake temps low. And that extra volume may hurt turbo spool up a little bit, but being the setup this has, ton of fuel, smallish turbo, automatic, I think it's going to be all right. So I'm going to cut that out. All right, so I got both sides marked out in the white paint pen. The yellow was what I did before, which is just kind of a rough outline of the intercooler itself. What I did is intercooler is 45.5 inches wide. I measured from this seam of the radiator support to the seam on the other side that matches. That's 64.5. Subtract that, you get 19. Divide that in half, you get 19.5. Sorry, 9.5. So 9.5 inches from this seam of the support to this line is where the outside of the intercooler is going to sit. And then I put it up against my top stop here, measured from the ground to the bottom edge of the port there. And that was a measurement which is going to be different for everybody's truck based off of ride height. But what that got me was...
So when I was doing this layout here, I had that piece of wood across the top of the radiator support. Ultimately, I found out that that was going to be, I got rid of that so that way I could get the intercooler up just that little bit much higher. So unfortunately, I did have to make some adjustments after I cut these holes out. But ultimately, I put the center line of the bottom circle at 3.5 inches from the flange here that I'll highlight. And that's what works for me. So that's a good reference point for you if you're looking to be doing this same project.
So I know that I'm going to have to open up this hole a little bit more, but it's going to be at least in the right spot. And I'd rather open it up than to take too much away at the same time. No one's ever going to see these holes, but I know that they're going to be there and they're going to be as accurate shape-wise as they can. So now is going to be the fun part, which is getting a big old hole saw and pop them in there. So this triangle is essentially made up of 3 different circles. So these top 2 circles I'll hit with a 2.5 inch hole saw, and then this one will be a 4-inch hole saw, connect the dots. This end technically has a curve to it because of the intersection of this, but that should not be a huge deal, but it should get me close enough to be able to get this thing in place. So now the fun part is drilling a hole in Zach's truck. That's all you get for now. So if you want to see the rest of this project, make sure you stay tuned to the channel. If you like what I'm doing, let me know down in the comments. And we'll see you on the next one. We're going to get another step closer, get all the piping done on Zach's truck. But that's going to do it for now. So we'll see you later.